Okay. Hi. Okay, welcome everybody to How to Submit a Winning Entry for the 2018 NAIOP Virginia Awards. We're really happy that you're here. I'm Reed Perkert with Christopher Consultants. I'm one of the co-chairs for awards this year. I'm joined in the back by John Smith with Skanska. He's my co-chair. He's going to come up at the end when we get to all of the Q&A to help out with that. We're going to be more than happy to answer any questions you may have, but we just ask that you hold them to the end. And if you're listening to us online, welcome, and also please feel free to use the chat feature to submit your questions. We prefer if you select so that you can chat all, so everyone online can see all the questions that are being asked as they're being asked. Next, of course, I want to thank our sponsor, HIT. Thank you so much for hosting us today, and thanks to everyone who is here in person and those online. Today I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to walk you through the submission process. I'm going to review the award entry guidelines, including what's new, because we do have a couple of new categories and a few tweaks to the categories from the past years. We're going to look through some sample award-winning entries and marketing slides to give you a good idea of what we're looking for and how you can be creative within the guidelines. And then I'm going to explain to you some of the behind-the-scenes details. I'm sure you're wondering what happens after you submit, or maybe what happens during the judging process. I'm going to provide some helpful hints, and then I'm going to open it for questions. But the most important thing is I want you all to leave here with the confidence, too, and knowing how to submit a winning entry. So first, why submit? Why go through the submission process at all? Well, first of all, ultimately winning. Everyone wants to win, and I want you to gain recognition from your peers. It's free PR for your project, and you build relationships with your project team. The process. First, I hope that you all are here because you have a project to submit. The more submissions we get, the better the awards are. Once you've identified a project, there are a few simple steps that we need you to go through. First, submit an intent to enter by August 30th. These entries are monitored by the NAIOP staff, and they monitor them for a couple of reasons. One, we check to see if there are any duplicate entries. Maybe you've submitted an intent to enter, but so has somebody else on the project team. We want you to work together in order to have the best submission possible. We also make sure that you've submitted something in the correct category. Maybe you think it belongs in one, but we look at it and it might be a little bit better in a different category. We'll work with you to make sure it's in the best category. Intents to enter, it's important to note, are not binding. You can submit an intent to enter and ultimately not submit a submission. However, we want you to submit a submission. And we also do it to make sure that you've gathered your team and that you get permission from the owner. This is a crucial step. You have to have permission of the owner in order to submit an entry. It's actually part of the requirements, and we'll go through that a little bit later on. We also want you, like I already said, to seek input from other team members. Have you talked to the architect, the broker, the general contractor? Again, this helps make a well-rounded, all-inclusive submission. Another thing that you need to do is schedule a professional photo shoot. I cannot stress this point enough. Especially for capital improvement and adaptive reuse projects, we strongly encourage before and after pictures, especially if you can get them from the same angle. There are a lot of times where someone might submit a photo and your feet are in it, or there's a mop in the corner, and just try to avoid anything like that if possible. We can tell the difference, and so can the judges, between a professional photo and one that was snapped on your iPhone. Then we need you to submit an entry, photos, and submission fee by 5 p.m. on September 28th. I'm going to go over these dates, but it's important to remember that all of this information can also be found online on the NAIOP website. Next, we will design a marketing slide to be shown in the foyer before and after the gala, which will not have to be submitted until closer to the actual day of November 2nd. And then lastly, decide if you want to sponsor. And again, we suggest you lock in early in order for you to get the most bang for your buck. So next, we're going to actually go through the award entry guidelines. This is what it looks like if you pull it up online or if you've seen a PDF, and I'll kind of just explain the information that's on there. So again, this document can be found on the NAIOP website, and it contains everything that you need to know in order for you to determine whether or not your project can be submitted. Please review the categories, the deadlines, any instructions for writing your submission, etc. All of it is here, and it's in detail. If you have any questions about any of the information you can find in here, you can reach out to Kathy D'Amato with NAIOP. She's in the back of the room today, but she will be a great resource for you as you go through this process. The second pages of the award entry guidelines, again, are fairly straightforward. They're instructions on how to format your submission. And again, we've done our best to make the instructions as clear as possible so that it's as easy for you as possible to submit an entry. Submissions should be less than 4 pages. There is an exception, and that exception is for a master plan submission. With the master plan submission, there's a little bit more detail that we need you to provide, so we give you 2 additional pages. But again, I don't want to confuse you by going down into that level right now. All of the information can be found here. Again, this may seem like a very obvious statement, but please follow the directions and only use bullet points. This makes your submission extremely easy for the judges to read and review, which ultimately makes it easier for them to determine whether or not you receive an award. The final pages of the award entry guidelines talk a little bit about, or talk about the categories. This is where you can figure out exactly where your project fits. Your submission may fit into more than one of these categories, and that's okay. Ultimately, we want you to read the categories and the definitions carefully to pick the best one. Again, if you think maybe my project fits into 2 categories, or maybe I'm not sure the best fit, give someone at NAIOP a call. We'll be more than happy to walk you through that process. And again, you can also always submit in 2 categories. Now, the important thing to note, if you're going to submit in 2 different categories, it's crucial for you to submit 2 separate packages, each one tailored to that specific category. It's possible that you might have some information you can cut and paste, but ultimately, in order to increase your chances of winning, just tailor it. If one is, if it's capital improvement, maybe, or building mixed use, whatever it might be, really focus on what that definition says and make sure that's reflected within your submission. We are excited to have a couple of, this is just the second page of the categories. So make sure that when you review it, you're reviewing all the categories. We have a couple of changes from 2017. I prefer to call it new for 2018. We wanted to take a look at the categories and really think about how these categories fit into the overall NAIOP membership. So a couple of things came up from 2017. First of all, building capital improvements is now subdivided. There's an institutional and a non-institutional portion. So again, think about your project and think where it would fit best. And one of the reasons that we did this is because it's really difficult to compare these 2 things if they're in a category with each other. And the judges felt that it would be much easier in the future to subdivide them. So we did that for 2018. Building multifamily is now its own category. Building hospitality and retail is also now its own category. The reason that we did this is we did this for a couple of reasons. First, it captures all of the project types being built or developed by NAIOP members. When NAIOP was founded, obviously it was more industrial and office properties. We recognize that that might not be reflective of who we are today, especially here in Northern Virginia. We wanted to make sure that you all felt you were able to submit your projects and that they were getting the recognition that they deserve. So when you are thinking about this, especially when it comes to hotels, restaurants, fitness facilities, entertainment venues, first of all, we hope that you will all submit these types of projects, but also, if you're submitting them, think about, is this a chain? And if it is a chain, great, but how does this chain stand out? What is it that's award-winning? When you built this Jimmy John's, did you have to save the facade because it was historical? An interesting point. Definitely something that should be included. When we built this Hyatt Place, was it very difficult to get zoning, or was there something specific about the loading or unloading that maybe sets it apart from other Hyatt Places? So those are just a couple of things to think about. So instead, the judges don't look at it and say, I could walk into this anywhere in the nation. What is it about it that sets it apart? And now, again, we talked a little bit about the intent to enter. I know I've provided a very quick overview about why this form is important, but here it is. Here's an example. And again, to review this important information, it's important to fill this out for a number of reasons. One, it puts you on the awards committee's radar. We keep track of projects that are coming online within the time frame and within the deadline. So we have a good spreadsheet of that, but again, it puts us on our radar. Maybe you're submitting a project that wasn't on our radar before. Again, it allows NAIOP to identify those duplicate entries so you can work together with your project team. It gives us an opportunity that we can answer any questions regarding the category or any other part of your submission early. Again, allows the committee to review, but it also allows us to encourage people who might not have submitted an intent to enter. If your project's on our radar and we didn't get an intent to enter, we might give you a phone call just to encourage you to submit. You know, if there's a category where maybe we don't have any entries or only 1 to 2 entries, we take a look at that specifically and say, who do we know that would fit into this? And again, encourage them to submit. Again, it's not binding, but you will receive reminders about upcoming deadlines, which potentially could help so that you're not trying to put everything together at the last minute. It is a lot of information that you need to gather, but if you break it up in chunks, it shouldn't be too bad. The next thing we're going to do is talk about telling the story. Here's an example from Davis Carter Scott. You know, they did an excellent job storytelling in some of their submissions, and this is an excellent example of how to explain your project and the importance of putting thought into your entry. Awards are not simply based on pretty pictures. You need to tell the judges how and why you did what you did. And again, some of these things come up in terms of, you know, start early, hold a brainstorm session. It's incredibly important to include thoughts from the entire team, and that comes through, especially here when you're in the storytelling and narrative portion of your submission. If it comes from only the architect's perspective, or if it comes from only the general contractor's perspective, you're going to miss all of those other details, which potentially could sway the judges one way or the other. From now, so you can see this, again, all of these sample entries and sample submissions were also posted online so that you can review them in detail, and I suggest that you do. The teams that submitted these in the past have given us permission, and I'm going to go into this in a little more detail. They've given us permission, and the only information I believe that's redacted from any of these submissions would be the project cost. But everything else is exactly how they submitted it, the judges. So next we're going to go through some sample entries. We're going to review 3 award-winning entries from the past years. Again, as I mentioned, each of the submitters and project teams gave permission for us to show and post their submissions both today, but also on the NAIOP website. Again, I encourage you to review them in detail in order to see how you can creatively submit within the guidelines. The first sample that we're going to review is Marymount University. This project was submitted by Gensler. And some of the comments from the judges were, it was easy to read, they discussed the topics found in the submission instructions, and the photos emphasized points in the narrative. Again, this goes back to what we were saying earlier about professional photos. You want those professional photos to be directly linked to what you're saying in the narrative. If you're saying this part was difficult, or this was really intricate, or we did something unique here, take a picture of it. I mean, there's only so much that we can use our own imaginations or our own thought process. Just show us. It makes it that much easier. I think we can go to the next slide. So, and again, this is an example of, so the first one that you saw was Gensler's write-up. This is their actual submission. So you can see here how they labeled each of the pictures, and then each of these, if you go back and look at the submission, were points that they made. And I believe they actually might have even numbered the narrative so that you could go look at these and find it and flip back and forth. The next sample entry is going to be an interiors project. The interiors were for Broadsoft Inc.'s office. This is another one that was submitted by Davis Carter Scott. They used distinct language to make their point, and comments from the judges included, for interiors, it helps to see movement through the space. They like the inclusion of a floor plan. Davis Carter Scott also used numbers on the floor, directly onto the floor plan, which corresponded to the photos they included in order to help the judges understand the space. When you're thinking of interiors, especially, it's really important to, first of all, capture why did the designer design the space for the client or the owner in this way. It's were there certain things that were important to the owner in terms of the owner's mission or what that company does, and how did the designer include those things when they were designing a new office space? So again, on this floor plan, as you can see, there are some sites that are numbered, and again, then they pulled those out and showed those throughout their submission. And the judges really were able to get a sense of the flow through the space and how, if you were an employee in that office, how would it feel when I'm walking to one part or another part, which again helped them feel like they were in that space and helped them help them avoid this project. The next one that we're going to talk about is a little bit different. This is a sample entry of a data center. This is MCC1 data center, which was submitted by DVA Architects. And comments from the judges included. It was very easy to read. It was well laid out. Though it's important to note, this might not work for every single project. It did work for this one. They included lots of pictures. The only downside to this submission, and something for everyone to be aware of, is the margins on, if you're looking on the left side, one of the margins is a little bit tight. When we assemble all of the submissions, we put them then into a large 3-ring binder that's then handed to the judges. So you need to think, if holes were punched in my submission, are they going through a picture? Are they going through words? You don't want anything that detracts. You don't want the judges wondering, what were the 2 words that were here that now I can't see? Were they the make or break? Not normally the case, but again, we try to catch things like that too when we review the submissions. But here you can see that some of the pictures might have had a hole through them. So that's the only thing that we can say. But again, they chose to include a picture for every section that they bulleted, which again, almost right away the judges saw this and said, wow, this looks great. Read right through it and said, this deserves an award. So after you go through this and you have put your submission together, the next thing you do obviously is you're going to submit your entry. So you're going to go online and you're going to find the Submit My Entry form. This is very straightforward. When your entry is complete, obviously you're going to go here and you're going to fill out this form. And once it's filled in, you're going to be able to do the following things. You have to upload your permission email from the owner, which we talked about earlier. You can upload your submission as a PDF, and then separately you will upload your photos. Then once all of that's uploaded, you'll be able to pay for your entry, and that's it. Once you do those steps, you're going to get a confirmation email, ta-da. Once you've submitted, you'll receive this. We highly recommend that you hold on to this for a couple of reasons. One, proof that you've submitted. If we have a question or we didn't get something from you, we'll be able to reference this, or you'll be able to reference this, and we'll be able to coordinate and figure out exactly what we need you to follow up on, or if we have any additional questions. We asked for all the submissions by 5 p.m. on September 28th. That is a hard deadline. That's why we're having this right now in August, to give you all 2.5 months to put together your submission. We will not extend that deadline. So again, just keep that in mind. So hold on to this to prove that you did actually submit on time. And again, next we're going to go into sort of what happens once you submit, because now you've spent all of this time working on your submission, and then there's obviously from September 28th, and awards is not until November 15th. So a couple of things happen. First, as I mentioned, both NAIOP and the committee review the submissions together. We're doing a couple of things. The first thing we're doing is check for compliance with the instructions. Did you accidentally include the name of one of your team members in the narrative? Obviously we'll have to block that out, because when the judges review them, they're essentially anonymous. So if something like that comes up, we're able to cross it out. The other thing we do is we make sure it's in the correct category. Even if you've worked with NAIOP prior to putting your submission together, there's a chance that once you write your narrative, it might actually better fit into a different category. So when we review those submissions, those are the types of things that we're looking for. Next, NAIOP creates a PowerPoint for each category. This is reviewed by the judges and uses the pictures included as part of your submission. I'm going to go into the judging in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, and I'll talk about those PowerPoints then. Next, the submissions are printed and photocopied and put into the binders I just mentioned. These are given to the judges on the day of judging. It's important to note the judges do not see them prior to that morning. They do not leave the room. The judges don't get to take them home with them. It's truly one day of judging. NAIOP brings them to where judging occurs, and then they leave. NAIOP leaves with them as well. Judges review the submissions, and again, they do not visit the site. And now I'm going to go a little bit more into the judging process. So when the judges arrive on the actual day, they're given the binders, which when they first sit down can seem a little overwhelming because these are some big binders. However, the judges sit down, and what they do is they pick the category that they're going to start with, and the first thing they do is they review the slideshow. This slideshow, again, has all of the pictures that you've submitted. Then they flip to the entry section and look at all of the entries that were submitted in that particular category. Once they've done that, they go back and they review the slideshow again. And they do that for a couple of reasons. One, because you might have forgotten what a picture is. Two, they might be looking for something specific that you mentioned in your narrative, so you can see that image. But also it sort of helps them to start narrowing down their choices. Then they discuss all the entries that are included in that particular category, and they come to a consensus for the winner. So again, what do judges look for in your submission? The judges are looking for excellence. That's the first question they ask each other once they finish reviewing a category. Is there a project in this category that's deserving of excellence? They also think, does the submission comply with the instructions and guidelines? Is the project compelling? What about this project makes it stand out? Is the story interesting? Maybe the story is interesting because of design elements. Maybe it's interesting because of all the legwork you had to do to even get that project off the ground. So make sure that story, again, is interesting, or maybe it's intricate. Do the photos match the narrative? Do they help tell the story? We want your photos, again, I can't stress enough, to help tell your story. You know, it's a long day for the judges, and again, one of the reasons we decided to go to bullets instead of doing paragraphs is it breaks it up. So again, pictures really help break up that narrative and are very useful in helping to tell your story. And again, do the judges have a clear understanding of the scope? So sometimes when it comes to interiors, obviously we have them broken down by different levels. But when you look at maybe capital improvements or adaptive reuse, maybe you have transformed an office building into a school. Are you choosing to only talk about specific components of that school, or are you talking about the overall scope? Are you saying this was 100,000 square feet? These are all the things we had to do. This is how many months it took. Make sure that you include those details, because otherwise the judges have very little way of knowing all of that information. We're going to talk now a little bit about helpful hints in order and why you're putting together your submission. Only you need to upload photos, like we already mentioned, as part of your submission. However, only 2 to 3 of these photos need to overlap from your submission into those that are going to be used in the PowerPoint. This gives you a really good opportunity to include some additional pictures that maybe are exciting or interesting, ones that maybe didn't fit into what you were trying to say, but again, speak to the overall scope or narrative of the project. You can include as many photos as you want in the submission, similar to what we saw in the data center entry, but make sure that you stick to the page limit. The page limit is non-negotiable. Again, 1,000-word limit, including captions. So the captions, again, give you a good way to tell that narrative, but make sure that you're keeping track of the words, or your word limit. No extraneous formatting of graphics or the pages. While I know a lot of you are extremely creative and so are your design teams, it actually detracts from what you're trying to say and can be a distraction to the judges. Again, it may look good, but it can make it difficult, and you don't want to do anything with your submission that may make it difficult on the day of judging. I'm going to talk a little bit about submission pitfalls and lessons learned. So here are some things to avoid. Not answering the questions in the guidelines. Not bulleting or breaking up your text. Not adequately conveying the project or project scope in the narrative. Not using professional photos. You also want to make sure that you're choosing descriptive language over flowery marketing language. This is important because, again, you want to make sure that you're getting the details into the narrative so that everyone, both your project team and the judges, have an idea of the scope. And the last thing is forgetting to include a site plan or space layout if your category benefits from it. Again, when it comes to the interiors, give a floor plan. When it comes to the master plan, give us an overall site plan. These are things that, again, speak to the magnitude of your project and the level of detail that you went through. Now we're going to talk about marketing slides. This is not a requirement, but just do it. This is free PR and advertising for your project and your project team. These are shown, if you're familiar with the awards, they're shown in the foyer before the awards and then after as well. It gives you an opportunity to showcase your project in a slightly different way. So I'll flip through some examples of how to do that. So this slide actually speaks to the specific details. And again, you have questions about what you need in terms of the JPEG files or how long it's going to be on the screen. All of this can be found online. So we'll flip through some of the slides. So this is an example. Obviously, this is the National Science Foundation. They chose to do some nice pictures, and then they also include the project team at the bottom. So this, again, is a good way to get recognition for your entire project team. And this is MITRE. Again, they made a point to include everyone who was on their project team. And the same thing is true here. So really, this is truly where you can be a little bit more creative and showcase your project in a slightly different way. And here you can see they chose to include actually a before and after picture, which was extremely helpful both in their submission and here as well. And lastly, we're going to talk about sponsorship. There are many opportunities to market your project in firms at the gala that are both included when you submit an award, but also through sponsorship. We recommend you commit early for more visibility so you can really showcase both your firm and your project. We believe that you get a great return on your investment and recommend that you check out all of the opportunities online. However, I will talk about one of our most popular categories, which is the 2000 door prize sponsorship. In addition to being able to raffle off a great prize, so anyone who comes to awards gets a raffle ticket. And then we give out door prizes throughout the night. So first of all, you come, you get a raffle ticket, which is awesome. Everyone, I think, always wants to win our prizes. And then the other thing is you or someone from your firm gets to pick the winner the night of. So right away, you're getting the spotlight on your firm, your table, and the representative who you choose to pick the ticket. But again, please review all the sponsorships because maybe you want to put something together as a firm, but then maybe you also want to put together something as a project team. So think about that when you're going through your submission as well. Again, I know we covered a lot of information in a very short period of time. I'm going to open it up now for questions. We'll also review and read aloud any questions that may have been submitted during the presentation. I want to stress, though, please don't hesitate to reach out to Kathy if you have any questions at any point during the process. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing what I'm sure will be award-winning submissions.
Someone's answering our questions online already. So.
So we can read through them.
The one that was read was just a reiteration of what when the intent to enter forms were due. And thank you, Gloria, who's online, answered correctly. It was August 30th. So that was the first question.
Do we have any questions from anybody in the room?
I will just say I've already had two sets of duplicate entries on the intent to enter. So please do go ahead and submit them. I've already talked to the people involved so that they're not doing a lot of work they don't need to do.
Anything from the audience here? This presentation couldn't have been that good.
Yes. Yes.
So the intent to enter, that's also online, correct?
Yes.
All right.
It's online. I believe it's, if you go to the NAIOP website, go to events, and then awards has its own drop down from there. And that will have all the intent to enter information, the submission information, and again, it will have the sample entries that we reviewed quickly here.
Yeah, so we have a question online asking for clarification. If we're submitting for multiple categories, do we submit one intent to order, intent to enter?
I think it only allows you to do a single one. I think you have to do it separately. I mean, I think you have to go back to the form again. I'm not sure it allows you to do more than one category per form.
So you would need to submit a separate intent to enter for each of the categories where you plan to do a package or submission.
Yeah, most likely will generate an email from me just making sure which one, if it's definitely for two or not.
Yeah, there's another question too. In 2017, there was a picture limit of 4 images per page with a limit of 4 pages. Is that still the case for 2018, or is it free for all?
You can put in as many pictures as you want, as long as you don't go over 4 pages. So, but the only thing is that you have to have 2 to 3 that are on the paper and in the PowerPoint that we do for the judges, because otherwise their brains will not be able to put them together. If they've seen the pictures here and then they see them up there and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that project. So it's very important to have some crossover. It doesn't have to be all of them.
That was my question.
To add on to that, just keep in mind what was discussed about how this information is disseminated to the judges. They are copied, bound, and given to them in this book. And the book is probably 3 to 4 inches thick by the time they get it. I'm not saying that images are degraded, but if the images get really small, you can imagine that probably starts to not look that great. So I caution by making images too small.
And I think one of the things I didn't mention, and maybe I should have, so everyone has an understanding of this aspect of judging, is the judges are not local. So we purposely pick judges who are in the CRE industry, but they're not in Maryland, DC, they're not in Northern Virginia. They might come from other parts of Virginia, but we try to pick them so they don't have any bias coming in, they don't have any preconceived notions or a lot of insight into one project or another. If for whatever reason something like that comes up, normally they remove themselves from the judging of that particular project. So it is important to include some of the details that you might think that someone in this area might know. Just include it because they might not know.
The next question is, will the non-winning entries be returned with notes to improve?
Interesting question. I can't guarantee that. I mean, I think that would be very difficult.
How about if there are notes taken? Well,
we do take notes on some of the submissions, but if I have 10 in a category, I'm not sure I'll get notes on every single one. So I can't guarantee that. You can certainly call me afterwards and let me know if I have some notes on it or whatever. But we don't ever return anything. You can just ask after if you're not.
I'll check in with you guys here before I do the next one online. Any questions? All right. Do the judges see the marketing slide before they see the actual entry?
So the marketing slides are completely separate from the PowerPoint that they see during judging. That might have been a little bit confusing, and I apologize if it was. So marketing slides are shown only the night of, and that's where we say, pick your 1 or 2 best pictures, include your project team. That's strictly for the night of, so that people in the foyer, it helps sort of to drum up excitement if you start seeing the images of the projects that were submitted, because otherwise, if you're an attendee, you might not know. But the slides that the judges see are strictly those project images that are submitted as part of your actual submission. And yes, they do review that PowerPoint prior to seeing the entry, and then they review it again a second time.
And just, if you put text at the bottom of your picture saying this is the foyer leading into whatever, we keep that on the picture for the PowerPoint. However, if you've got your name on it, you'll take it off. I will just crop it right out. And if your submission has it in the written part of it, if I can't finagle it with my, Adobe stuff, then I'm gonna black it out, which will look really bad when we make the photocopies. So, people try and they don't pay attention. They slip in their company name or somebody on the team's name. We can't have that. We just want it to be very anonymous.
So lots of words like the owner, the architect, the engineer.
Exactly.
Let's see here. Do all photo files need to be sized/cropped in 8" by 10", even if that means adding black and white border?
So I'm not the graphics guru. I don't know if I'm not sure. What we want are the pictures that are big enough so that if we're using them in the PowerPoint, that's great. But if we use them the night of and they're going up on the big screen and you just sent me this little tiny image, it's going to look like crap. So it's better to send us a bigger file and whatever. In terms of the sizing, that was given to me by someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I know.
Unlike me.
Like if they're going to be on a screen or whatever.
Yeah. If you have a specific question in terms of sizing, feel free to email someone on the committee or Kathy after this, and we will make sure to work with you to make sure we have the correct images for whatever portion of the submission you're talking about. Because otherwise, I don't want to confuse anybody here right now, and I know some of the details can get a little confusing. So again, just put that question in a follow-up email, and we'll take care of it. Right.
All right. We are submitting our company's office interior renovation. Do we need permission? Do we need the permission email? I think if it's your own interiors office, you're fine. You don't need to get owner's permission to submit your own office.
If it's your own building, if it's your own anything, you don't need to do that because it'll be clear to me that and just so you know, I prefer that. So last year I got a lot of people who took the guidelines with all the categories, and then they made that part of their whole package. I don't need all that. I know what that says. You just give me what I need, those 4 pages or 2 pages or whatever, and we're good to go. And the cover sheet that you fill out online will come to me, and I'll put them together, and it'll all be good. The permission sheet is for my files. It doesn't go in the judge's binders.
I think that's all we have right now. Any more questions from the audience?
If you have any questions, my business card's out on the form out or on the table out there, and also, it's online. Ask me, I'm happy to work with you. It's better to work on the early end of it than the later end. Really, people are emailing me September 27th and asking me questions. By that time, it might be a little too late for you to get a really good submission in. So, that's it.
I'm just gonna add on that if you guys are considering sponsorships, Marie pointed out, like, earlier the better. Like, because as soon as you sign up for the sponsorship, your name starts getting attached to many different types of publications, things like that. So you just get more bang for your buck. So
it starts out on our website, and then it goes from there. The night of, we have a PowerPoint scrolling through the whole evening, and up until we start the program. And everyone has their own page with their logo on it, so it's all right there. It goes out on our invitation and everything. So. Courtney?
Can you talk a little bit about the Instagram page and what you're posting on there for viewers?
Julie, would you like to answer that?
Sure. So for our Instagram, we are using it to, we have picked a few past submissions to feature on there. And also we have our 6 steps to success on there. And we plan to continue to use that to inform people about awards, what sponsorships are available, and when registration opens, things like that. And we also plan to use it for, other events and things that, like that. So we've got 100 followers now, we just started it for awards, so.
It's just another avenue to get the word out because in previous years, we've done a lot of emails and that got to be quite a bit. So we're trying to vary it up a little bit, give people another way to look at the information and to remind them that it's out there. We're doing LinkedIn, we're doing Twitter, and we're doing Instagram. But Instagram is really exciting because that's all new this year.
Yeah, and it can just give you more information for people who are interested, and without, loading you up with a bunch of emails.
I mean, the goal for us, and, I think is the same for NAIOP, I mean, the goal of the committee is to make this information as accessible and as easy for you all as possible, because we want you to submit, and we want your projects to receive awards. We're not trying to make it seem like it's behind the veil. We want to be as transparent as possible. So follow Instagram, follow us on LinkedIn, because we will put out slightly different information there as well. But again, use NAIOP as a resource, use the members of the committee as a resource. Anything that we can do to help you throughout this process, we'll come alongside you the best way we can while also keeping ourselves removed, because we know that's important too. Ultimately, we want you all to be successful. We want you to win awards, both for your sake and for the sake of the firm.
And you can follow us on Instagram just for our other events as well.
Yes, Adam.
So the sections that were laid out in those sample entries, are those according to the guidelines or are those laid out to their discretion? So like project parameters or like design, like.
So they laid those out based on the guidelines, but they read the guidelines and then they chose to make those headings to make it as easy to read as possible.
Gotcha.
And I will say, I believe a good example of that is the data center entry. And I think that they did, and because it's not right in front of you right this moment, I think they did go sort of from the big picture down to some of the minor details, which is important too, because you want to give everyone an idea up front what the scope of the project is and then drill down into the details throughout your submission.
All right. Thank you.
And the other good thing that they did there is by sort of putting headers or putting bold lettering, you're drawing the judge's attention immediately to maybe a couple of things that you want them to know off the bat, as opposed to just having everything in the same font. We do have, I believe, a font that you have to stick to or a sizing you have to stick to, but use italics, use bolding, because that really does draw their eye to those submissions.
I can't stress that enough. The judges, they need it to be easy to read. They're looking at a bunch of things. We take breaks in between the categories, but they need to be able to synthesize the information fairly quickly. And if you are working on the submission and you're using the team approach, maybe you have somebody who wasn't actually on the team, but part of the industry, part of your company, read that particular submission, and maybe they'll have questions that you didn't even think about that you should have answered. So it's just a suggestion. I know it seems like a lot of work, but in the end, when you read the submissions and they're great, it's really exciting. And we've read plenty that were not. To say that. Anyway, any other questions?
I love it.
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you, Marie, for doing this.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you November 15th.